Joining me in studio is Peter Kamalingin, who is from Oxfam Pan-Africa, and he is a program director. Also joining us via Zoom is Muhammed Lamin Saidy, an award-winning activist from the Gambia and policy expert. He is joining us via Zoom from Gambia. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here on Bottom Line Africa, and happy Africa Day. I'll start with you, Peter. Do we, as Africa, have anything to celebrate this day?
Thank you very much, Ashley. And thank you for having us also on this day when we are marking the Africa Day. And it's an important day. It's an important moment in the history of our continent. Now, because of time, let me get straight to the question that you have asked. Do we have anything to celebrate? I think yes, we have something to celebrate, because at least that identity of us as Africans continues to be, as far as some of us see it, an important means to sustainably attain the long-term stability and happiness and prosperity of all of African citizens. But I think that more than celebrate, I think it is important that we use these moments to actually also register and reflect and regret some of the missed and many missed opportunities that we as a continent have had to bear over the last so many decades. At the time when the Africa Day was started on 25th of May, I mean, it started largely as a liberation day when the Organization of African Unity countries came together to actually complete the emancipation of the continent from colonialism. That was achieved in terms of political independence. And that only represented an opportunity. Where we have failed and continue to struggle to date is other aspects of liberation, the economic aspects. I think one of the news lines you are running today is that, only last week, our governments, our leaders, our presidents and heads of governments were meeting in Paris to discuss about how we can finance Africa's development. I mean, that's a paradox in itself. We fought to liberate ourselves from Europe, but we have to still look there for solutions. This is a mark of failure of our leadership. And I think where we have missed it, especially, and I think we need to make a distinction between the Africa Day, the 20th of May, and the AU Day, which I think is different. When we moved out of the OAU to AU, one of the things that some of us were most happy about was that there was an intention, a deliberate statement of intent to actually engage the citizens more. The problem is that the AU in many ways continues to be largely a club of leaders and heads of government to the exclusion of the citizens. And I think that's where we are having a lot of struggles. A lot of the things that are being prioritized are those that do not necessarily respond to the felt needs of the African people.
All right. Okay, I'll bring in Lamin. Thank you for joining us, Lamin. And of course, as we've heard Peter, he's mentioned that the AU is a club of leaders. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think we have anything to celebrate today?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm happy to share this discussion with Peter, my brother there. Yeah, as I think Peter pointed out, yeah, we have something to celebrate. I think the journey in itself what to be commendable. But I think I don't call this day a celebration. I call this day of a reflection and further actions that need to be taken to complete the journey that our forefathers have started. I think the ball have been dropped at some point. As Peter have said, we unfortunately got ourselves with a club of leaders that will, put their interests on the table and obviously fail the citizenry. They have passed a lot of very nice policies, but unfortunately they are not able to convince the rest of the continent to implement. Again, I think the whole foundation of that meeting that happens on the 25th of May, 1963, the failure in itself for me started there. When the African leaders divided themselves into two camps, a camp that says like let's liberate now, let's unify one nation, one economy, one agenda, and all of that. And others say no, let's do it incrementally, let's do it gradual process. So for me, that's where the failure started. And eventually they agreed on the gradual and incremental progress of liberating Africa. And that continues to date. And then we can see that African leaders are not able to agree on anything tangible. We have been dependent on the West. Africa is blessed with all the kind of natural resources that it can process and build its economy. So we had achieved a political independence that one can celebrate, but how much have we used this political independence to emancipate ourselves to deliver, the economic independence? And as well, that reflects on the citizenry. So this is the question that Africans are dealing with, especially the people that we work with at the grassroots level as Africans Rising Movement.
Okay, I just wanted to bring in some statistics that I found. They're from Afrobarometer. They did a survey in 22 countries, and they state that 64% of citizens trust their traditional leaders, 72% believe that they are not corrupt, 64% approve of their performance, and 44% indicate that traditional leaders listen to them as opposed to elected leaders, and only a minority think that elections help produce representatives. Peter, this is to you, because you've talked about how AU is a club of leaders. So going forward as Africa, do you think we're losing democracy?
I think that is something that is true. I think that the statistic that you've shared from Afrobarometer is sadly true in many of the contexts. And I think that this also further elaborates what I was already saying, that for the last so many decades, we have built up a system where citizens have been excluded. And as a result, they have become disillusioned and they have given up, which I think is very unfortunate, because for any society to transform, the citizens must take interest in engaging and influencing the quality of the leadership that they get as a country. But I think that it is unfortunate that this is the situation, as it were. But I think one of the things that we need to do on a day like this is actually to remind all citizens that whether you like it or not, you do not have a choice. You must engage and pull together as citizens across societies, across continents, across countries, across tribes, across ethnicities, come together and influence the quality of the leadership that we get as a continent.
Okay. Lamin, coming to you, and this is one of the issues that is facing Africa, that is financing Africa. Peter called it a paradox in itself. We're at a time where we're struggling to survive, struggling to survive. People are struggling to survive due to the job losses that were due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Not forgetting, we have debt issues as Africa. But mostly important, we borrow, but we do not account. Even as we look for solutions on how we can progress as African countries, what needs to be done?
Yeah, I think we really need to think in terms of controlling our resources. Africa is actually blessed with a lot of resources than blindly depending on the outside. It's very unfortunate and very sad that we have seen African leaders, going to France, taking loan to pay loan. We have seen African leaders, example of Kenya, taking loan to pay loan. And some of them have already been banned not to take loan anymore. So where are these loans going? Where are this money going? It's not reflecting on the citizenry. And Africa is actually already blessed with a lot of resources. But how are these resources, raw materials, produced? And then we have seen that all these raw materials are produced out of Africa to the West and being processed there. So when you look at the chain of the production of this raw material into products, what it does is creating a green grass out of the continent where raw materials are taken out of Africa. When they're taken out of Africa, our environment is destroyed. They go out there to create more better economies for the outside world. The process of processing these raw materials are creating jobs. At the end of the day, the effect of those processions of the products is polluting the environment, is affecting the livelihood of Africans and the communities, especially the grassroots communities. So at the end of the day, the impact that it brings to climate on the continent is so high that it's destroying our livelihood. So at the end of the day, the economic of Africa is destroyed, where our raw materials are taken out of the continent and they are processed out there. We are losing jobs, we are losing livelihood. And at the end of the day, Africans live in extreme poverty. So the governments definitely need to really unify. When we don't unify, we cannot really achieve any, economic emancipation. So there have been some change in terms of, agreeing on the free trade agreement and free trade zone. But the implementation of this need to be really enforced. Because like when you look at West Africa where I live, you know, at the border points, nothing have been achieved at all because police and all these corruption practices is too much. So we are not able to implement policies when it comes to trade. So there are a lot of challenges that African people are struggling with when it comes to economy.
All right, Peter, coming to you, as we think of unifying Africa, do you think we can achieve the spirit of Ubuntu?
I think we can, but it's not just by saying it or by passing resolutions, because Africa is dominated by so many nice resolutions. But just pick a few of them. For example, a few years ago, African heads of government signed as AU and made a commitment to say they are going to finance their health budgets for every country up to 20% of the national budget should be committed to health.
Yeah.
If we had done that, the COVID-19, which has damaged the livelihoods and lives of people who would not have got us where it is. We said for education, we're going to commit a minimum of 15% of the national budget to education. And for agriculture, we say 10%. Now, these three things alone, if we were serious about them, if we had actually attempted and lived those commitments, we would not be where we are. We would not be waiting year in, year out to go to China on the Africa-China conference, to go to Russia on the Africa-Russia conference, to go to UK on the Africa-UK conference, or to France, as they did last week, to look for solutions. When, at the same time, if we pulled together, we would have, for example, taken sovereign decisions as African governments to stop illicit financial flows out of the continent. This continent is losing in the range of anything between $60 to $90 billion a year to illicit financial flows. Money that is being shipped out of the continent. This continent is donating money to the rest of the world. It's not poor. It has been made poor by political decisions and, of course, the indifference of the African citizens. This is where the action should be focused on.
Okay. Lamin, coming to you even as we conclude, you know, we clearly have a problem, and it's been said, and you have said it too. But let's look at the future. Let's look at the young people who are our future leaders in Africa right now, most of them who are jobless. They're looking at the current leaders that we have, who are marred with corruption issues, not forgetting all that is happening in Africa in general, in the continent. How do we guide them to the right path?
Yeah, this is a very important question. You know, the process of conscientization of African citizens, the young people, the young minds need to really start, need to be strengthened actually, and that's why the African Rising Movement is actually even created to really unify the struggles of African people and reflect internally to see how we can definitely work together to create solutions to our issues. You know, there are many solutions that have been stated, but how far have we gone into, you know, implementing the solutions and taking corrective actions? You know, when Africans are in crisis in a particular country, country A, the rest of the continent sometimes are quiet. How do we work in solidarity? How do we advance the spirit of Ubuntu? And I used to be young, used to see our communities, you know, being supportive to each other. You know, our forefathers have been supportive to each other. How do we re-engine that will to ensure that, you know, people are really able to work together? You know, the solution for me is the unification and the numbers, that when the numbers are coming together, are working together, will create the power. When African leaders actually will be able to agree on particular decisions and taking actions together, you know, it will be difficult for them to be influenced.
But then how do we unify? Sorry to cut you short, briefly. How do we unify if we are fighting within ourselves? We have conflicts around the continent.
So this is the time that young people really need to take the mantle of leadership. You know, they need to know that it's the time for them to really take action and then be able to work together. So it's a matter of educating the mindset of the young people that, you know, it's enough for all these infights, it's enough for all these, you know, push and pull. We really need to work together now and act together. And that cannot be done without conversation. We need to know each other's issues so that we can collectively see the connection and the linkages of our issues to be able to advance them. And then social media have given us that opportunity for us to utilize and advance that faster and better.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We are out of time. But of course, joining me to have that discussion is Peter Kamalingin, who is from the Oxfam Pan-Africa. He is a program director there. And Muhammed Lamin, an award-winning activist from the Gambia and policy expert who's joining us via Zoom. Thank you very much, gentlemen.